We're in Ghana to start a conversation about Africa. Africa for too long has suffered, and everybody knows the reason why Africa has suffered. People can try to present it in different stages. The Prof speaks about it every day. Africa has been going through what it's going through because of what I always say, that it is due to one problem: leadership. It is failed leadership over the years that brought Africa where it is. I want to start a conversation because of what Dr. Arikana has said, talking to the youth of Africa. No continent in the world today has the potential of Africa. Not one. We are the second largest in terms of population and size, but our potential is far greater than even number one, because today Africa is the only continent that have a population of 1.1 billion youths, energetic, talented, ready to leave the world in different areas of the world. Africa is home to the biggest, highest amount of natural resources, from minerals to, we have 65% today of the world all cultivated arable land. So imagine what we can do. We can feed the world. We can do everything. But ironically, because of what I started with, failed leadership over the years, Africa is also home to the highest number of poor people. Out of the 700 million people in extreme poverty today, 431 million lives in Africa. Over 30% of our population. If you go to multidimensional poverty, out of 1.1 billion, over 60% is in Africa, with Congo and Nigeria leading. Today, in the surface of the world, Congo has the highest amount of natural, call it minerals, over 24 trillion. Nigeria has similar situation. You can extrapolate Congo situation to all over Africa, where they have everything, but they are producing poverty. It cannot continue with our youths. With the energy they have, they can lead the world in technology, in health, in entertainment, in everything. All they want is leadership, purposeful leadership. Africa has what is, look at its wealth, resources, shamelessly stolen and put in private pockets. It cannot continue. So we are just here to continue conversation. It's not about any country, anything, but talking to the youth of Africa to know that they can change the world. They can change the way things are in Africa. Africa should not be a continent where people come to beg or plead for aid. We should be contributing to aid of other people with the resources we have. And that's what Africa should be. Their own Africa should be. That's all the conversation is all about. It's about the future of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Peter Obi. And I dare say that the peace, in quote, that is enjoyed in Nigeria today, negative or positive, he's responsible for it. Because he has refused the violent way, and it's very good to say it in a place like Ghana. When some of us took to the streets, we were willing to bring Nigeria to our knees so that we can rise up again. But he seems to have an ideology, and in the little time I spent with him, I could understand that America and Europe are all built on genocide. They just wipe out the people and took. So Africa is shaping a completely new definition and dimension. Nigeria speaks 600 languages. That is I don't know even how to put it. But to manage that diversity, and it's something we will do and we can do, to share something that has never existed in the continent of the world. This is what has been given to us to do. And so I want to thank you, sir, for responding to what you said, because truly it's only leadership that can do that, and you're speaking to the people who will take that. We'll take a few more questions. This is so beautiful happening here today. Please, your name and your question.
So, my name is Kobiche. I'm a Ghanaian blogger. So I'm very excited. First of all, I like the fact that there's no New Ghana Foundation, but it is New Africa Foundation. Now, one of our major problems we have in Africa is the illiteracy rate and the mindset of the people. As leaders, how are we going to consciously change the mindset of the people to receive the change that we all demand for? And also make sure that education will be able to go down to every African child, so that as they grow up, their mindset for change will be able to, grab the knowledge that everybody who wants power wants to, appeal to. Because for instance, if I come to you and I tell you that I'm giving you sugar for you to vote for me, if you are illiterate, the probability of the person convincing you is high. But if you are literate and you know your power, I doubt people will use just mere material things
to get to you. Thank you. I think that's a very powerful question. Mama, I think you need to respond to that.
Yes, that's a very interesting question. And I need you guys to pay attention to what I'm getting ready to say. You raised a very important issue that you said, being literate or illiterate. But I'll tell you, our issues as Africans today are issues of the mind. The most dangerous African of today is an African who is colonized, educated or not. Coming from Zimbabwe, I can honestly tell you that the people who are moving Zimbabwe in terms of the awakening are the villagers. They seem to have a better understanding of what is really going on and are less likely to be sold, are less likely to sell their souls. And you must look at the people around you. Some of the most difficult people, I was called by the Africa group at the World Bank one time to address them for their annual event. And I went through all the issues and the pillars of why Africa is where Africa is, and I analyzed the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization that the 14 African former French colonies were made to sign. I thought everybody understood. But at the end of it, 2 African-born economists working for the World Bank came to me and said, "But Ambassador, why do you keep talking about the Berlin Conference? It's a thing of the past." And to my utter shock, I'd gone through the process of explaining the Berlin Conference and that it is a policy that was put in place in order to see to it that Africa and her children are forever defeated and dominated. And that as long as we have a country called Togo, as long as we have a country called Burkina Faso, as long as we have a country called Malawi, we are defeated. Intentionally so. So these 2 economists working for the World Bank are the same ones now that are being used as instruments of our own self-destruction. They're the ones that are being sent to Africa to sell policies that are detrimental to Africa's progress. So the question then becomes, what is our education doing for us? And it goes back to the miseducation. The people who are in power are the ones who are failing to stand up and challenge those who are raping us in broad daylight. Pardon my choice of words. I was once asked by one African, Ambassador, let's try to be nice to these Westerners. Let's not be too direct as we challenge them. And I did ask this brother of mine, I said, my brother, help me out. How do I tell a man who is raping me to rape me nicely? I said, help me with the language. And this was an educated professor who is advising me to be nice. How long am I going to continue to be nice? Those are the educated people who are sitting in the boardrooms and they choose to be mute. And when they are mute while representing us, that means 1.4 billion Africans are mute. It is not the villager who is sitting at the boardroom table. It is the elite, the educated. So my son, what is our education doing to us? What have we done to undo the colonial education? I hear right here in Ghana, perfect example. There's not a single Kwame Nkrumah book that is required reading in the Ghanaian educational system. Whose problem is that? Most African countries, our educational system is still the colonial educational system. So what do you expect from the leaders that we have today if their education remains colonized? So may I say, the most dangerous person for Africa today is a colonized African. And we must challenge each and every one of us to have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror. Are you colonized? Where do you stand when it comes to the issues to do with Africa? How do you feel about the continued exploitation of Africa? How do you feel about neocolonization, imperialism? Do you even understand it? Do you even know what the Berlin Conference means when it comes to your ability to buy bread, to your ability to get a job? Can you connect the dots back to the policies that are designed to keep us where they want us to be? It is the elite, it is the educated who are refusing to challenge the status quo and speak on our behalf, educated or not. So I'd like to answer your question by saying our miseducation is what is leading us to the Africa that we are today, an Africa that cannot stand up and defend our turf with facts, with our truths. Ours is a simple issue. You see, truths and facts, these are constants that never change. All we gotta do is stand up. I like to end by saying, some of you have seen a poster. There were black men who were bending over, and there was a table on their backs. And at the bottom, it simply said, and on top, of course, sitting around the table, were white people who were feasting. And the caption simply said, all we gotta do is stand up. Mm-hmm. Why have we failed to stand up?
Thank you. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to say that while we bring this convention, this conversation, this press conference to a close, I want to demand on your wisdom, both of you, Prof, beginning from you, to look at the issues and give a closing remark. And I believe I can trust that once that is done from both of you, we can bring this to a close perfectly. Thank you. Prof.
Thank you very much. When I, several months ago, received a phone call from a young African, Nana Freedom Bediako, inviting me and others to this conference. This is what he told me in summary. Africa needs to speak about hope to our young sons and daughters. And that hope must not be based on sentimentalism or romanticism. It must be grounded on things that can change the lives of young Africans. It must be about what we can do in order to improve our agriculture, in order to add value to our resources, in order to give meaning to the things that will change people's lives. When I arrived in Accra, Ghana, yesterday, the 6th day of January, the year 2024, that young man, Nana Bediako, took us to a room and gave a demonstration of what him and his foundation think about African solution to African problems. How we can use our human and natural resources to change our circumstances so that we can be beggars no more. We were touched. And you who are present here, you are journalists who will give the oxygen of publicity to what we are saying here today. I want to tell you that Africa will only change, and change for the better, when our young men and women embrace that spirit, the spirit of personal sacrifice for the general good. It is not a journey for the faint-hearted. In that journey, you will have many hurdles. But when you face a hurdle, use it as a ladder. In that journey, you will cross many rivers. And when you cross one river, there'll be many more rivers to cross. In that journey, you may climb and will climb many mountains. And when you climb one mountain, there'll be more mountains to be climbed. And when I asked that young man, Nana Bediako, why new dawn? He says there have been many dawns, but this is a new one, with a new meaning and a new resolve. We'll begin to leave Accra, Ghana physically, but Accra, Ghana is our true emotional and intellectual north for Pan-Africanism. We'll come here again and again. If only to energize ourselves about which is good and right for the continent of Africa. Africa will rise, and this struggle for Africa is an intergenerational struggle. The baton that we now wield will be passed from generation to generation. Nana Bediako. Go forth with your new dawn.
Go forth.
In the knowledge that fortune favors the persistent, the patient, and the vigilant. Shall be well with you.
Let's take it to Mr. Peter Obi as he gives his closing remark on this. Thank you so much. much, Professor. Always igniting the fire in us.
And I'll join Prof in encouraging you to persevere on what you started. Like Prof said, whatever happened today is not the ending. For me, it's the ending of the beginning. We just began the journey. Prophet said where he wants us to take this conversation to in different parts of Africa. And I think we should do that. And I've listened to my dear sister talk about education. I've always maintained consistently the problem of Africa, like Chinua Achebe said and Prof says every day, is squarely failure of leadership. It is failure of African leaders rising up to their responsibility that is keeping Africa where Africa is today, a continent of immense hope and resources. The only way to resuscitate and keep that hope is by having competent leadership, a leadership that means well. That is the only way to make a difference. As long as we continue hiring wrongly, as long as we continue having incompetent people who don't have capacity, we will remain where we are. To change that hope for the youth is to know that it requires sacrifice and everything. We talked about education. Yes, I agree with my dear sister that on issue of a colonized, educated, whatever it is. But what are the leadership today doing in terms of investing in those critical areas? I was just talking to Dr. Morgan this evening, and I said to them, you don't, yes, it's good when people, and I don't argue that with you. It's good to blame others for our problem. I don't believe in blaming anybody for my problem. I deal with the problem. We are doing this evening. In my country, this year's budget is we need, if there's anything Nigeria needs, it's human capital. Because that's what will drive our HDI. We have very low human capital. HDI, we're 158 over 180 countries measured. So we need to invest in education. But we're providing for tertiary institution scholarship, 5 billion in our budget. And we have 6 billion to build car park for legislators. Is that because of colonialism? So let's talk about our own this thing. So this is where we start. We don't have a national library. As a country, the #1 country in Africa, our national library was awarded in 1995, and it's being built to today. But our legislators are providing 3 billion to buy books for their own library. This is not the issue of colonialism. It is the issue I want us to start dealing with our problem. I don't believe that at this stage, anybody is the problem of Africa except Africans themselves. And I want the youth to start dealing with the issue head on. And that's where I stand. I don't believe, I've traveled all over the world. By infinite mercies of God, I've been, with my own background as a trader, passed through certain schools where I claim not being a professor, not being a doctor, but I claim to be an alumnus of some good schools. And I said to them, I don't believe there's any white man, there's any yellow man, there's any red man who is more intelligent than I am, or any African is. We are children, we can compete. Africans can compete with anybody and do better. But we need this fair leadership to give way so that we can start facing the world on the same terms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.